Kirst and the kids are not here today, so they send their greetings. We basically, her grandfather owns owns like a little game lodge, just a couple of hours away, and so we got that opportunity to go. We haven't been in a while, so we decided to go there for a few days, and they decided to carry on staying there with the rest of the family. It was really sad for me leaving them yesterday, because I was coming back to an empty house. But as I was driving out, I realized that I was coming back to my other family.
Amen.
Yes, thanks, Carol. I was coming back and I was thinking about the people, the faces who would be here this morning, and I thought that drive back was worth it. Even though I don't have my wife and my kids with me, that drive back was worth it. So well done on being here today. Well done on recognizing what we actually are as God's people. Came home obviously to an empty house. The only thing that welcomed me was a grumpy cat. He just came in and just went back, and I thought, man, it's just like South Africans, just grumpy, complaining all the time. I thought, hey, thanks for coming back to me and for feeding me and whatever. So instead of sleeping next to my wife, I slept next to a cat last night, and it wasn't that great. But I'm super excited about next month. And the journey will be going on as a church, and finally leading to us pressing the reset button at the end of July. And so next month is going to be really critical for us as a body. So please set aside every Sunday morning to be here. Next Sunday particularly, we'll be touching on our new vision and our new values. We'll be inducting new members, so we're excited about that. And we'll be going through something that is uniquely Pulse Church. Right, what we feel we've discovered about what brokenness is and how we journey towards wholeness, because that's what Jesus wants for us. In order for us to really live the life He's called us to live, we can't do that if we are broken. Right, and so I'm excited about next Sunday. But today we are just kicking off a new series called Presence is Everything. And we just finished another series called Jesus is Better. So it's nice to have these small mini series within a greater book of the Bible. But presence is everything. For those of you who were here when we kind of started our church, you remember that by a month and a half into it, we all had to go into our homes, right? Because of lockdown. It wasn't nice at all because we were trying to figure out how this Zoom thing works. And I'll never forget those first couple of Sundays where Mike is trying to lead worship on live guitar, but because of the lag, he was already in the chorus and we were still in the verse, and it was terrible, man. It was really, really bad. And we did that for so many months. I think for about 7 or 8 months, till about September, October of that year. And we had to do that even more the following year because of lockdown 2 and lockdown 3. So it was really bad, and I think none of us want to go back to those days because we realize that presence is everything. There's nothing like being face to face. I was chatting with someone the other day, and we were having a bit of not a tiff, but a bit of a discourse on WhatsApp, and I eventually said, look, I think it's better if you actually just sit down and had a chat, because presence is everything. Right? When it comes to the presence of God in our lives, it is everything. There's nothing like being face to face with God, and I think sometimes we sabotage that by thinking that we can kind of be in our own, away from the people of God, where the presence of God is, and just think that it's okay. But it's not, because presence is everything. I'm going to say that a million times today. Presence is everything. When we got engaged, Kirsten and I got engaged, I was working in Pretoria, and she was working here, and so I was living there, she was here, and not being able to see your fiance for a whole week was agonizing, man. And it's not the same. And so even though we tried to do video calls, it was not the same. And so presence is everything. And I feel like as a church, if we just grasp that one truth, that being together with each other in the presence of God literally energizes us. It invigorates us. I mean, how amazing was that worship session? It wasn't just because they chose the right songs or practiced well or sang in the same keys. It's because we were together that the presence of God was actually accentuated with each other. And so I'm just full of energy this morning, right? So please turn with me to Exodus 33:1, because God's presence is something we want to really press into. What does it mean to be face to face with God? Exodus 33:1. So remember last week we finished the whole Jesus is better thing, and so there was this whole notion of that's okay. No, there was this whole notion of Israel having preferred this golden calf to God, and so this is the aftermath of that. Verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Get going, you and the people you brought up from the land of Egypt. Go up to the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I told them, I will give this land to your descendants." So God is finally saying, Moses, get up. It's time for you guys to go to the promised land. I love this about God, because even though they had cheated on him, even though they committed adultery against him with this golden calf, God still says, I'm going to keep my end of the deal. I'm going to be faithful. So I'm going to give you the promised land which I promised to your forefathers generations ago. And I just love this about the Lord, is that He doesn't treat us the way we deserve. He treats us better than what we deserve. Right? And God is a covenant-keeping God. And even though in the last 3 weeks we saw that Israel kept on breaking that covenant, God says, I'm going to keep my end of the deal. And But the strange thing about this is that their relationship between Israel and God took strain because of their adultery. It's like a marriage. You know, when one spouse has committed adultery, that marriage takes a lot of strain. Now there are seasons where your marriages will take strain because of external circumstances, right? Things that happen around you that are not part of your control. Like in our marriage, in my marriage, we've had external difficult circumstances that took strain on our marriage. But that's different from when one of the spouses actually cheats on you and commits adultery. That's a different kind of strain. That is so grievous that the whole sense of betrayal, especially in terms of from God's point of view, was something that I hope I will never have to experience that kind of betrayal. Right? So this marriage was taking strain. Even in the midst of strain, God is saying, I'm solely committed to you guys. I'm going to keep my end of the deal. I'm going to keep my end of the covenant. But then there's a bit of a twist, verses 2 and 3. And I will send an angel before you to drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, so many ites. Go up to this land that flows with milk and honey. But, this is a big but, and it does not lie. But I will not travel among you. For you are a stubborn and rebellious people. Because if I did, I would surely destroy you along the way. Man, so God is adding a caveat. He's saying, I'm going to give you the promised land, but I'm not going to go with you. Wow, so God is actually saying, I will do this thing for you, but I'm not going to go and be with you. I'm rather going to send an angel. And for all intents and purposes, an angel is just a really poor substitute for God, is it not? Even though this angel was going to destroy all of the enemies, it's not the same like having God there. So I just want to put forward a truth up here that I really believe is important, that God's presence doesn't just mean that He is there. It means that we also have access to Him. It means that we also have access to Him, because this is what God was saying to them. When He's saying to them, I'm not going to go with you, He's actually also saying that you're not going to have access to me through Moses. You know, a few months ago, we were celebrating our 10 years sort of from the time we had our first date. And originally it was Cape Town Fish Market at Cresta, but now it's no longer Cape Town Fish Market, it's John Dory's. And so we took our kids there anyway, and I saw one of the saddest things that I could ever see, and it was basically a husband, a wife, and their son. They came and sat to the table next to us. But as soon as they sat down, the wife and the son pulled out a cell phone, and they were busy on their phones. And here was the dad just sitting there on his own, even though his wife and his son's presence was there. You see, their presence was there, but he had no access to them. He had no access to them because they were so closed off. But the beautiful thing about God is when He says that His presence is with us, it means that we also have access to Him. Right? That we can enter into His presence. We'll look a bit into that later on in Hebrews. But this is so sad for me because the Israelites did this because of their adultery, because of their cheating on God. They no longer had access to Him. Even though He says, I will be faithful to you and give you what I promised you, you're not going to have access to me anymore. And this is truly, truly sad. But what I really appreciate about God, though, He's also showing them mercy. Because He's saying that if I was to go with you, you're a stubborn and rebellious people, I would have no other choice but to destroy you. Just look at that. Because He is a just God. Right? So He can't just look at their disobedience and sort of sweep it under the carpet. He had to go, I choose well to not go with you. Because if I go with you, I will destroy you, because that's how wicked you are. Even in the midst of their rebellion, there is grace. There's grace upon grace upon grace. Even in the midst of their adultery. And then you carry on reading verse 4. When the people heard these stern words, they went into mourning and stopped wearing their jewelry and fine clothes. And so you'll see in a bit that this is actually not them choosing to do so, but God had actually asked them to do so. Because Israel is really not feeling sorry for what they had done. They're actually feeling sorry that they now no longer have access to God. This is what's going on. You know, John Chrysostom, one of the early church fathers, said that to be separated from God is a greater punishment than 1,000 hells. To be separated from God is a greater punishment than 1,000 hells. And so here God was separating Himself from them. But why did He ask them to remove their fine clothes and their jewelry? We'll read on verse 5 and 6. For the Lord had told Moses to tell them, you are a stubborn and rebellious people. If I were to travel with you for even a moment, I would destroy you. Remove your jewelry and fine clothes while I decide what to do with you. So from the time they left Mount Sinai, the Israelites wore no more jewelry or fine clothes. What is God actually trying to communicate by telling them, remove all your jewelry, all your fine clothes? Well, what does jewelry and fine clothes do for us? I mean, you see the ladies this morning, you know, you've got earrings and got makeup on, and guys are looking pretty nifty as well. But what does jewelry and fine clothes do to you? They make you beautiful. It makes you feel good. Makes you look beautiful, right? This is what God is saying, and I'll put it up on the screen now. Thanks, Gloria. Is that when God's beauty no longer enthralls us, our own beauty begins to fade away. It means that God is saying, you're no longer beautiful to me. Remove your jewelry. Remove your fine clothes. So this is what happens to us, friends, is when the beauty of God no longer captures us. And we run after our false gods, that even our own attractiveness, even our own beauty begins to fade away. The God's people are no longer beautiful, not only to Him, but to the world. People are no longer attracted to the church because the church is not attracted to Jesus. This is what happens, and God has to communicate to them. He's saying, when my beauty no longer enthralls you, then your own beauty fades away. Your own beauty fades away. You see, God is the one who actually makes us beautiful. But when we are not going to Him, then our beauty begins to fade, right? It begins to fade. But when we are faithful to Him, we love Him, that means our own beauty is accentuated. We become attractive again. We become a compelling people to the world around us. And so if you're a Christian here today and non-believers are not attracted to you, well, guess what? Maybe your own beauty has diminished because you're no longer attracted to the one who makes you beautiful. It's very sad. You know, when we first, I remember the first day I actually met Kirst. It was actually 2 days before I met her was when she rocked up at church right up the road here at Northcliffe Union. So I was in charge of the evening service. I was up in the sound box and you get a bird's eye view of the whole congregation, right? So it was almost as if the Holy Spirit shone a spotlight on her as she walked into the room. When I looked from the top, and I noticed her walk in and sit down, and I noticed her walk up and get out again at the end of the service. And so that's all it was. And then 2 nights later, when she rocked up at my Bible study, I was like, hey, that's the same girl, right? She's at my Bible study. How cool is this? So anyway, at the end of that, I messaged her the next morning like I would normally do. And, I said, hey, glad you could join us. Thanks for coming. I do that for newcomers, right? I mean, I hadn't really spoken to her then. I just do that for newcomers. And all I expected was the usual response which you'd get from people, which is, yeah, it was good, it was bad to be there, just 2-3 lines. But instead, this girl proceeded to just message me these long messages about how amazing God is, and about how awesome God is, and about how beautiful He was. And she had spoken about God like no other woman I had met until that point. See, that was what attracted me to her, was because of her, how beautiful she found God. This is what I'm trying to say to us this morning, is that people are not attracted to us because we don't find God attractive, because His beauty rubs onto us. And unfortunately for the Israelites, their beauty had diminished because they no longer found God beautiful. He's trying to communicate that to them by saying, take off your jewelry, take off your clothes. Very sad. And then verse 7. It was Moses' practice to make the tent of meeting and set it up some distance from the camp. And everyone who wanted to make a request of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. So basically, as part of distancing himself from them, he's saying the tent of meeting, where I would meet with Moses physically, would no longer be with you guys, but it would be at a far distance away from you. But you and I, friends, as new covenant believers, you see, when we feel distance from God, it's not God who's left. So guess who's moved? Guess who's removed ourselves from His presence? Because as new covenant believers, we have access to God, unlike the Israelites. So if He feels distant, it's not God who's removed His presence from us. It's us who've walked away, unlike the old covenant believers. And in verse 8 and 9, whenever Moses went out to the tent of meeting, all the people would get up and stand in the entrance of their own tents. They would all watch Moses until he disappeared inside. And as he went into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and hover at his entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. And so just think about this scene. It's such an incredible scene. If I was a director of a movie, I would place different cameras at different angles to just capture this scene, because they would just watch Moses walking through amongst them, and they would all counter their tents and they would stand. It was almost like they would stand on both sides of the aisle as Moses would walk in the middle, and they would watch him because he was the only one who had this privilege. And he would walk and walk, and eventually he would walk into the tent of meeting, and they would look from afar and see, and they would see him go into the presence of God. And as the Bible says, like he would speak to God, like next week we'll see that, well, not next week, but in August, we will see that he would speak to God like a man speaks to a friend, face to face. Just imagine this scene. I mean, if it was me, I would look at this and go, man, I wish I was in Moses' place. I wish I could walk into the presence of God like Moses did. But all I could do is just stand back from afar and just watch. And just watch. I get to do a lot of weddings. I'm doing 2 this year. People right in the room who are getting married later on in the year. And it's beautiful, and I absolutely love it. But one of the things that you do in a wedding ceremony is at the end, right? After you pronounce them husband and wife and all of that, you basically ask the people to stand on both sides of the aisle. And then what happens is the husband and the wife, they walk down the aisle together, and people just watch, and they throw petals, or they throw rice for some people. You don't get too aggressive, because throwing rice at people it might hurt you. At our wedding it was bubbles that people blew that came over us. But there's this very special scene in a wedding where the groom and his bride, the husband and the wife, they walk down the aisle, and people on both sides, they get to watch, and they get to cheer, right? They get to throw stuff over them. Just think about the scene that I just described with Moses and the people. You see, because of Jesus, you and I no longer just get to watch. Because He is our bridegroom who escorts us down the aisle into the presence of God. Just think about that. You have that privilege that He escorts you into the presence of God every day. But the sad thing is, we choose not sometimes. We choose not to. Even though we have this incredible privilege where Jesus is waiting on the one end of the aisle, waiting to escort you down the aisle into the presence of God, sometimes we say, no, thank you. Sometimes we say, no, I don't want to be in the presence of God. You see, unlike the Israelites who were excluded because they messed up, you and I never excluded from going to the presence of God. We've got to choose to take Jesus' hand as He's waiting at the top of the aisle so that He can escort us down the aisle. We've got to choose to take Jesus' hand, because if we don't, we shouldn't be surprised if we're not feeling the presence of God in our lives. See, Jesus is a better Moses because He paid the ultimate price so that He could escort us into the presence of God. It is by His blood that we're able to go into the presence of God. And at verse 10 and 11, as we close our text, it says, when the people saw the cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, they would stand and bow down in front of their own tents. Inside the tent of meeting, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks with a friend. And afterward, Moses would return to the camp, but the young man who assisted him, Joshua son of Nun, would remain behind in the tent of meeting. And so Moses gets to spend time with God face to face. This is anthropomorphic language. In other words, not that God had a face, but it's actually saying that He was sitting as if you would sit across a coffee table with a friend. Man, you know, Jesus really reveals to us the deeper things of God. I don't think it's up on the screen, but I want to read for you from John 15:15, because this is what it says about Jesus and what He does for us as he lets us into the presence of God, as He escorts us into the presence of God, as He reveals the secrets of God to us. Right? It says, Jesus says to His disciples, I no longer call you slaves because the master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends, since I've told you everything the Father has told me. You see, there are things that you and I can know as Christians that no one else in the world can know, because we can know the mysteries of God, we can know the secrets of God, because Jesus escorts us into the tent of meeting, and we can sit in front of God as if we were face to face. This is incredible truth that as Christians we have the privilege of experiencing. In Hebrews chapter 10, I think it's up on your screen, John, the writer to the Hebrews, tells us a profound truth about this from verse 19. He says, and so, dear brothers and sisters, we can what? Boldly enter heaven's most holy place. We can enter heaven's most holy place because of the blood of Jesus. By His death, Jesus opened a new and a life-giving way through the curtain into the most holy place. So most of us will read that and go, that's only when I die. It's not. It's not when you die, because Jesus came to bring heaven to earth. And since we have a great high priest who rules over God's house, let us, present tense, right now, go right into the presence of God. Let us go right into the presence of God with sincere hearts, fully trusting Him. Why? Because number one, our guilty consciences have been sprinkled by the blood of Jesus. Right? So you don't go into the presence of God feeling guilty, because you know that His blood has already washed away your guilt, and it makes us clean, and our bodies have been washed as with pure water. But we have this access, and I feel like what keeps us back from going to the presence of God is because we feel super guilty, because you know what you did on Saturday night, and so on Sunday morning you feel like, I can't really come into the presence of God. I mean, we even had this conversation, I think, with one of our pastors' peeps, where they said one Sunday that they don't feel worthy of coming to church on a Sunday because of what they did on Saturday night. I want to tell you that because of Jesus' blood, you are worthy. His blood sprinkles your conscience clean. And this is why so many people who follow Jesus are not really experiencing the very real, tangible presence of God, because they're afraid to go in, because they don't really recognize what Jesus did for them. Man, if you always go back to the cross, like we said today, what He's done, keep on reminding yourself what He's done, because when you recognize that, you're going to go boldly into the presence of God. Because you know who you are, because what He's made you to be by His blood. You don't go feeling like, well, God doesn't want to see me today. You don't go into the presence feeling like, well, God is upset with me, and therefore He wants nothing to do with me. He wants everything to do with you. He wants everything to do with you. And so you and I have the greatest privilege in the world, because presence is everything. Presence is everything. There's nothing like being face to face with God. And you have that privilege when you're on your own. And you have that privilege when you're with the people of God. And I think the two play off each other so well. Is that when you are on your own in the presence of God, you actually want that to be accentuated, and that's why you come here together to join with God's people to experience that presence even in greater measure. The two are so interconnected. And chances are, when you're not really spending time with God in the week, you actually won't really want to come here as well. Because when you're spending time with God in the week, you're getting a glimpse of that presence, that taste. You're with Him one-on-one, and you're like saying, man, what would happen if a whole bunch of people together, joined together, connected, come together in the presence of God? I mean, my experience of God will be accentuated. The two are so interconnected. You don't choose to not walk away from a privilege that only you have as a Christian because of Jesus. It's no wonder that we're not attractive to the world anymore, because our own beauty is fading away, because we no longer find Jesus attractive. But because of what He did, He's put on those beautiful robes on us again. He's put on our fine jewelry on us again. And we've become the city on a hill where people look at the light and are drawn to that light. There's something attractive about Christians. It's connected, friends. And so today, even as we close, I just want us to really examine our own hearts. Because are the people around you compelled by the way you live? Are they compelled by your compassion? Are they compelled by your forgiveness? Are they compelled by your humility? Are they compelled by your integrity? The things that people around you don't have. Are they compelled by that and saying, I want that too? Because if they're not, that means there's a disconnect between us and the one who's so beautiful. We just sang today. What a beautiful name it is. I mean, it's amazing how the Spirit works, because I didn't even tell Mike the text that I was preaching on. But he chose the songs that were so apt. What a beautiful name of a beautiful God. You become radiant, you become beautiful. It's the same in the current relationship with marriage as well. Like a husband or a wife's beauty diminishes when they no longer find their spouse attractive. Man, you know, Jesus has something so specific for His people that I believe He planned a long time ago. He planned to make the people beautiful, so that through these people the world will be drawn to God, because they're drawn to their beauty. Well, so I believe that's what God wants to do in our church. And so as we come together over the next month, as we look at ourselves having a fresh start, I want to encourage, especially the ones who are not here today as well, please don't stay away. Because presence is everything. Presence is really everything. You know, I'll end with this. I already mentioned our Zoom meetings when we started off this church in 2020. But on a Wednesday morning, myself, Daryl, Mike, and SK get the privilege of having breakfast together and then talking about our people and then praying for the people of our church. You know what? We could so easily say, you know what? There's hectic traffic on a Wednesday morning because of load shedding, right? And it's too cold to wake up. Because in order for us to be together at 7, we have to wake up maybe 5 or 5:30 in the dark and do what we normally do in the morning, then get into our cars and drive to whoever's hosting that morning. And then for the person who's hosting, they got to make breakfast that early to serve everyone else. But you know what? Presence is everything. We could always easily choose to say, let's just do this on Zoom. It's not the same. It's not. God could have easily said from heaven, here's a book. Go read it. That's how I'm going to get to know you, and that's how you're going to get to know me. Presence is everything. Because He Himself came down. You see, what you and I don't realize is that we're not robots. We are embodied souls. We're embodied beings. That means that when we are together in the presence of God, there's something happening. There's a connection that happens that you do not get if you're just doing stuff through the screen. Presence is everything. And you and I get to meet with God face to face every day. It's Jesus who walks you down that aisle every day. And so if you give yourself an hour every day in God's presence, by reading His Word, by praying, by just meditating and receiving from Him, I promise you, your life is going to change. Life is going to change. And then it means that you want even this presence even more. Presence is everything, friends.